Big round of applause for Mr. Amr Shabana, please. He will hold the please. For coming. And then he's going to share the stage. The person that is going to be having the next conversation with him is none other than Mr. Saurav Ghosal. Please, big round of applause for Saurav. And I know Mr. Lee Beachill is very busy, but maybe you can spare a few minutes as a legend and someone who shared this stage so much with Shabana. Please come and share a few minutes with us as well. So please welcome Lee Beachill as well. What an honor, what a treat. This was a surprise.
I don't even like it.
I know you don't like it, but it's okay.
Hey, Beach, you're in the middle.
You're
You're in the middle.
Okay, here we go. All right. Well, thank you, guys. Enjoy. Have your conversation. Please enlighten us.
It's good we have microphones because I don't have any squash rackets left.
No, shoot.
Thank you, Adriana, for the lovely introduction. Although I don't think I kind of deserve to be in the same bracket as Shabana, Beachill maybe. But no, I think it's an honor to be here, to be in the company of Mr. Shabana, who's obviously already inducted into the Hall of Fame just a couple of days back. He's someone that I kind of learned so much from just watching him play. I don't know if you know this, but every time I played a tournament with him, I did everything I could. Doesn't matter if my match was like 2 hours later to go actually watch him play live, and I just played better just after watching him, because it was just an education every time I watched you. So thank you for that. And Lee Beachill, for all the times that I practiced with him, and he made me feel miserable and made me feel like I was the worst squash player on the planet. Thank you for that. Things haven't quite changed off the court as well, if you know him well enough to know what I'm talking about. But I think to kick things off, Shabs, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, you know, a lot of people have grown up watching you, including myself, and like I said, we've learned so much from you. But it was kind of like, it would be nice to understand, like from your point of view, like how would you kind of describe the essence of Amr Shabana as a player? Like what would be like the way that you thought about the game and, you know, approach the game as a player in general?
Yeah, I think the concept is the same. I was a real squash geek when I was young. I didn't have the option of kids have now of going on YouTube and watching reruns and repeating it. I grew up watching VHS matches. I remember I had this one VHS for the Jahangir and Chris Dittmar match in Malaysia. I think it was 1991. I remember just watching this VHS tape over and over and keeping it at, I think it was 2-all and 13-all, and I had to rewind the point back and forth. So it's like you said, it's about studying, and it's about putting in the hours not only on the squash court and on the gym, but it's also understanding the essence of the game, understanding your weaknesses, understanding your strengths. So even as a youngster in the club I grew up, we used to have a bookstore that used to sell the squash magazine. I think Beachill, you're old enough to know it. It used to be this small magazine called Squash Player. And it used to come out every month, and I used to wait for that magazine to come up every month, and on it was people like Peter Marshall was starting to come in. He was around 19, 20, and all the rest of the players, and I used to memorize that squash magazine, because back in those days, I remember we had to fax in our names into tournaments. We had to really call and get an international call card to sign up for a tournament. The ranking used to come once a month in the mail. So my only contact was that VHS tape and that squash magazine. And I used to memorize any material I used to have, really analyze it, and as technology started to improve, I kept that concept of really digging deep into every piece of data that I had, and I carried that on even when I'm playing my first round match or my final of the World Open, or even going to practice. I was very analytical, I was very data driven, and I think this is how I approached it. Once you have all the planning out and you have all the data laid out in front of you, I think the hardest part becomes actually doing the work. And people always tell me, which part did you like the most about your career and which part did you hate the most? I really enjoyed the analytical part. I used to like the data part. And for me, the hardest was actually doing the work. I was never the strongest, the biggest, or the fastest. Playing with Saurav, for example, I used to play with him and I was like, if only I can move like this guy, I think I can be a much better player. But I couldn't. But I decided, okay, maybe he's not studying as hard as I am.
I mean, I know you for almost 20 years now, and I can't believe you actually studied this much, so I've learned something new today myself. Obviously, you know, we've got Mr. Lee Beachill on this dais as well. Lee, you've played, you know, Amr a bunch of times in your career, had some pretty interesting tussles with him. What kind of, you know, when you were playing him, what did it feel like? Because I know from personal experience, that watching him from the outside is a completely different ballgame to actually being on court with him and feeling the pressure that he's putting you under. So can you describe that as cynically and nicely as you possibly can?
I mean, it didn't feel very nice, I can assure you that. But I guess, I mean, this guy is obviously a legend, and we spoke the other night actually, which was nice. But it's sort of going back a few years. I guess from a country perspective and from a player's perspective, Shabs is probably the one that came from Egypt that really sort of catapulted him to the very top of the world rankings. It's hard to believe that all those years ago we were quite a lot better than these guys. And when I played my World Juniors here in whatever, 94, 95 probably, Shabs was one of the younger players in the Egyptian team and already one of those talents that you look at as a slightly older player and sort of think, I'm hoping I retire by the time he gets good. Wasn't quite the case. We did have a few matches on the court, which was, looking back, nice. It was, you know, he had a lot of influence on many people's games, and there's a few people throughout different eras when you look back at squash, and they sort of change the way that an era plays moving forward. Nicole, probably one of them. Jonathan Power, probably one of them. He's probably one of them. Rami Ashur's probably one of them. And they sort of set the tone for how the rest of the guys and girls play. And you know, that's touching on what he said there. That's something that top players look at the top players and they take bits from what they can add to their own games in order to try and make themselves better. And I think he did that extraordinarily well, and sort of proved why he was so good for such a long period of time. It's not easy, but you know, my sort of question to him the other night was, you know, he was really the start of the Egyptian dominance for a good number of years. But I guess it's the same question to you now, is like, were you actually aware of that was happening at the time, or just too involved in it?
I think I was always told as a junior, you're very promising, but I remember when I was 14 years old, there was a person of high respect in Egyptian squash. His name was Ali Nasr. He was from Heliopolis Club, and he was in charge of the Egyptian national teams. And I remember I was with him. He was very sharp, and I remember him taking me to the center court, taking me away from the other players. And the center court in Egypt, in the national stadium, is maybe 1,000 seats, and when it's dark, it's really dark. And he pulled me into the stadium court, and already I'm nervous, and I'm a 14-year-old kid with somebody who I looked up to. And I remember him standing with me in front of the court, and he told me, where we are standing right now, if I give you a squash racket and a squash ball and ask you to play any shot from outside the court, you'll probably do it, and you'll do it time after time. But I have to tell you, you don't know how to play squash. And I remember, as a 14-year-old, I just looked at him. I was like, this man has gone mad. Like, how can I be able to hit any squash shot outside the court? And then the next sentence is, you don't know how to play squash. And it took me a few years. I remember probably around 22, 23 is when it really hit me. There's a difference between having the ability of hitting a shot, and there's another total different way of playing sport to win. And it doesn't necessarily means the flashy way or the fast way or the slow way. There's the winning way, which is what I picked up from the other players. Like back to Beachill, I remember the first time I've seen Lee Beachill, we were at the British Junior Open, I was probably 12 years old. And I was just walking around putting my squash bag in the locker room, and he was taking a shower. And then 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, he was playing the match. I was like, this guy was just showering. But what's he doing inside the squash court? And that shows you like you said, back in those days, we were just raw talent. Here in Egypt, we didn't have any sports science, we didn't have any proper planning. We were just raw talent, and already England and Europe and Australia were already ahead of us in sports science. He knew, even as a junior, that if you have a good cold shower, quick shower before you play 10-15 minutes, you wake up and you get your adrenaline going and you get your sharpness going, where we would just raise our hands for 5 times and just go straight into the court with no warm-up. So we really picked up from the rest of the world on how to do things, and I think now it's the other way around. I think the rest of the world now is picking up on what Egyptians are doing, and it's just yin-yang, and it's just back and forth, and I think as long as the tour is in healthy shape and the tournaments are in healthy shape, I think everybody learns. It's one community, and I think it's just going to be also for the sport as time goes by and you see the nations that pick up the different ways of approaching the sport.
Yeah, I think something that you mentioned, which is this person that you mentioned, Mr. Nasser, telling you about having the skill or the technical skill to be able to hit any shot versus understanding how to use that skill to actually win matches. I think those are two very different things, and I don't think everyone, even on the pro tour today, probably understands that to that clarity. To be able to be skillful is not just about technically executing on a consistent basis, because pretty much everyone can at the top level. It's about what you do when, and I think that's where, at least when I played you and when I watched you, I think that's where I felt like your biggest strength lay. It was almost like when you're sitting outside the court, you can tell a person, that, oh, the person should have hit the ball there, or should have hit the ball there, but you don't have eyes at the back of your head. But I think somehow you managed to find those eyes on a consistent basis, and you're very good.
Yeah, I think just touching on some of the things he said there, one of the key things for me, and certainly I think for any nation that wants to have, a number of top players, is one of the biggest things is competition. Like, around the time that he was coming through, there were so many good junior players, and competition just thrives, more competition, and people get better, and the special ones tend to come from a group of very, very good players. He's definitely a huge example of that. I probably was a huge example of that many years ago. And I think it's just so important that from the outside looking in, they look like a really tight group of people, whether it's in a World Team Championships, whether it's around events, but as we well know, squash is a very, very selfish individual sport for the vast majority of your career, and I think that's why probably we all enjoy, playing in those team events, because it's the very few opportunities that you get to play as a team in a very, very selfish and individual sport. But I think for any country or any nation that's had a lot of success, you can look back and there is always quite a good number of very, very good players, and they make each other better. And that's one of the biggest things that I think in my own country, like England, that's what we're lacking a little bit, is that number of players to make each other better. And I think, in this country in particular, there is so many of them that it's inevitable that people like him are going to come out of that group.
Yeah, I heard this story very recently. I don't know, maybe you can verify this, Lee. About
Do you
you.
need to tell me what the story is first?
No, I don't think it's that embarrassing for you, so it's okay. Apparently, at some point in time in your career, playing Amr Shabana, you gave a quote saying that this guy didn't understand the rule book of squash, and he threw it out of the window because he was constantly inventing the game in different ways. Is that something that you actually did say?
Probably, yeah. It won't surprise me. I don't know. It won't surprise me.
And what did you mean, like, in the essence of it, like, what did you mean by that? But the reason I ask is because Shabana, in a lot of ways, is a very traditional, hits the ball very straight, does all the right things.
He does, but it's like he was one of those players that, like, the older generation, when you come through 19-inch tin and 9 American scoring and 15 scoring, the game changed and it changed around the time when he was coming through. But you would play many players who were regarded as shot players in those days, and to explain that means a very attacking style of game, using the front of the court a lot more than it ever had been. Squash in the old days was a very attritional sport. 90 minutes, 2-hour matches, tons of let balls. And look, that's just the history of the sport. But playing him when he was coming through, he was an attacking player, and many players were. But when he attacked the front of the court, he would actually hit the nick. And I don't mean near it, or I don't mean like somewhere close to it, which many players did and many players were very, very good at. He actually started to finish the rally. And I think Jonathan was probably one of those players as well who had the ability to finish, actually just end rallies by just the pure quality of the shot. And he was probably one of the younger ones that came through who could just actually finish the rally from many areas of the court. And obviously since then, his influence on eras, that have gone beyond, like the Ramis of the game and people like that, I'm pretty sure looked at that because, I hate running, hated running. So in a lot of ways it's what I wanted to do as well. He definitely hated running because, if he could hit the shot rather than do another 3 or 4 court swings, he would definitely hit the shot. But it's a skill, and it's a skill to do that time after time, and under pressure and under different scenarios.
Sure thing. I think we've been on the back end of that a number of times. Not thankful for that, for whatever it's worth.
He said it, we don't like to run that much.
Our matches were definitely, I'm not sure the longest one we ever had, but it wasn't very long.
On the bit of the lighter side, I've spent a lot of time with you, and I think before me as well, I think a lot of players would attest to the fact that you were one of the funnier players on tour, both on and off the court. Is there a highlight in your blooper reel, so to say? Could be with Mr. Beachill on court, but with anyone else that you would be comfortable sharing with this audience today?
Well, one of the very few times I cheated. I can bring that up now.
That not been against me.
I was playing Peter Nichol once, and I had played him maybe 4 or 5 times before it, and no chance, not even close to winning a game. And I remember until now, I'm very bad at drawing. And I remember I had a warning from my sponsor because I didn't have the logo in properly. I had lost the piece of plastic that you're supposed to trace your logo with, so I had done it myself, and I don't think the Dunlop sign was a Dunlop sign. And I got a warning, and I think it was Paul from Dunlop, and he came to my room just before I played, and he's like, listen, we have a new fresh set of rackets, and we're going to sit down now, and I'm going to draw the logo for you. And he drew the logo and everything, and we're like, okay, we're set. And then I have to play Peter Nichol. And I remember after I played, it was the only time I beat Peter very comfortably. And then we were doing the interview after, and Peter's like, I can't see the ball. And what we found out later is that because the racket was so freshly done, the white ball was turning black. And he literally couldn't see the ball. And I don't know if I should tell him or stay quiet. It kind of wasn't my fault, but it is my fault. But I remember this was and Peter is a legend to me. Even when in the later part of my career, Peter, every time I hang out with him, there's a certain aura to him because of everything he represents. And I haven't brought it up, so maybe he's going to be watching this, and I'm sorry.
You don't look very sorry.
Okay, jogging the memory back a little bit. First World Championship win, Pakistan, 2003. A little birdie once told me that apparently at the opening ceremony, they called on court the top 16 seeds for the tournament. And for people who don't know, Amr Shabana was seeded 9 at this event. He's probably the last person that I know of who won the World Championships being outside top 8. So that's 2003. And for whatever reason, they forgot to call you on court. And one of the other players was like, Amr, you're supposed to be on court, but they didn't call you, we should tell them. And this is before the first round, it's like the opening ceremony. And you told him that it's okay, man. On the last day, they will call my name.
Yeah, I think on a serious note, when people tell me what are you most proud of, I think up to that tournament, my best result was quarterfinal in a major event. I was actually ranked 11 in the world, and 2 players pulled out, I think, for sickness. So I was ranked or seeded 11 in the tournament. And when people ask me what's your most cherished accomplishment, I think I'm the worst player ever to win a World Open. Like on paper, there has never been a player outside the top 10 who's never reached the semi-final of a major event to win a World Open. So for me, like Saurav says, I remember they didn't call my name. I remember playing in the backcourts for the first few rounds. I had to play David Palmer in the 3rd round. He was defending champion. I had to play Ricketts, Anthony Ricketts in the quarterfinal, who was also in the top 3 or top 4. So everything was against me in this tournament. But as the saying goes, there is no yesterday and there is no tomorrow. Let's just figure out today. And I think I flew under the radar. Like even after I came back from Pakistan, when that tournament, nobody was ready for it. So it kind of helped me in a way. It was just another tournament for me. But yeah, I mean, it was a sigh of relief for me. Like I don't need to hear anymore. You've got good potential, but you have to do this, you have to do that. So I think the stars aligned for me that week. And yeah, I mean, it was a good week.
I think looking back at all 4 of his World Opens and probably a good number of his PSA wins, there was probably a reason going into each tournament that he probably shouldn't win the tournament. You know, the latter stages, the last 2, I think there was Rami and a couple of others who were arguably doing better, coming through and probably were favourites to beat him going into the tournament should the 2 come together. And probably in all 4 there was a decent reason why he shouldn't win it, but the problem with people like him is they only need like a little reason to be against them, and it sort of makes them so much better. So, you know, the fact that little things like that happen and he looks at that and goes, okay, I'm going to prove you wrong, it's just like the little stimulation that people need sometimes to prove people wrong. And even in matches when you're playing him, like early on in a match, if a referee gives a bad decision or there's something happens in the match that there's no one here, that pisses him off, he's a nightmare. Like, because it just changes the dynamic of the whole thing. And there are other players obviously like that as well. But I think for him, you can think back, and I'm not sure you were probably favourite to win any of those World Opens. You were up there, but going into them, I'm not sure you would have been like the standout favourite to win.
I didn't put myself as favourite to win in any of the tournaments. I think this is what takes the edge off. You're not nervous, you don't have the pressure on you. It was much easier. I think every time I was on paper favourite, I ended up losing. And every time, like you said, when things have not been going my way, it's easier to say, okay, you have nothing to lose, let's just go in there and take it point by point and see where it takes us. It definitely takes the edge off. So,
Yeah. Actually, one question I have got, which I didn't ask you the other night for obvious reasons, is this place was always a place where you struggled. Like in terms of like, you know, your form, your wins. Playing in Egypt was a struggle for you, right?
yeah, it was a struggle. Coming back to that point when the expectation is so high,
Yeah.
some people feed off it. You have your Borada, you have Gregory Gauthier, you have Rami, you have Mustafa Asad. There's certain players that it takes a character to feed off that pressure and that expectation. For me, if it builds up, as I'm going into the tournament, I'm better off. But when you start at the tournament and you have your picture all over the city and people are expecting to win and already the adrenaline is there, it's tough for me to surf it. And I think that's why I struggled here. Even the ones I did play well here, I was still young and nobody expected much. In the early 90s, it was much easier for me. But with my personality, it helps to start from point A and start building on it, opposed to starting at point A and everybody's already at the finish line.
But looking back as like an older player now, a younger Shabana, is there anything you think you could have done about that, or is that just who you are, how you handled it at the time?
Sports psychologist for sure, because I couldn't do it on my own. I managed to do everything on my own, except that part, and it would take a very professional sports psychologist to walk me through it. Back in our days, it wasn't common, they weren't available, but I think as the sport grows larger and larger, you're going to, at some point, at certain times, need somebody who's a professional in that specific area. And I think I would have benefited a lot if I had that sports psychologist, just to guide me with how to deal with it, not what to do, but how to do it.
Well, there's a few players that glad you didn't, that's for sure.
Unfortunately.
I think something that Lee's already touched upon earlier today, but I think I just want to reiterate it because I personally don't think Amr Shabana gets enough credit for what he's achieved, both here as well as in the world globally. So just to put it down as statement of fact, we almost take it for granted today that Egypt is going to be the world champion, both individuals, team event. But the fact of the matter is that Amr Shabana here is the first ever world #1 from Egypt in squash, the first ever world champion in squash, and the first ever part of the first ever world championship winning team in 1999. So I think just for that, you should all just give him a big round of applause because that was unbelievable. So based on that, Amr, firstly, how does that make you feel? I don't know if you actually ever thought of it that way because you're the type of person who I think wouldn't. And do you think that what you did, both as an individual and also as part of the 99 championship winning team, has that kind of shaped Egyptian squash for the next almost 3 decades now?
Yeah, I mean, our first World Open title was in 1999. Again, I was very lucky with who I had around me, and back to Lee Beachill's point about the competition. We only would have done it, we didn't have the numbers back in the 90s. I remember in 91, 92, we used to play the junior tournaments. We didn't have enough players to fill a 32 draw. We were only 16 players, 20 players in each age group. No qualifying, nothing. It was 16 to 20 players. And I think what helped us is our Egyptian #1 men was Amir Wagi. People don't know that Amir Wagi, as a 21-year-old, he was our player and coach. So I remember as a 10-year-old, he would line us up in Gizira club, and he would start with me, as I'm the youngest, and he would give me 2 games, 8 handicap, and I had to just take 1 point to win. I wouldn't. He would take the next guy, and then the next guy, and then the next guy, building it to a proper match. And this is how it was. We all trained together, even my sister, who was the first woman junior third in 1989 or 1990. There wasn't enough players on the women's side and the girls' side to play. So the federation at that time decided, okay, since you're only 2 or 3 or 4 girls and you play together every time, so we're just going to let you join in with the boys. So it was maybe a group of 50 or 60, maybe 50 boys and 10 girls, and we used to spend the whole season playing the same tournaments in the different clubs. And this is what Lee is talking about, is once you have that, that setting where we never played exhibition matches in Egypt, never. We never got paid, until now. Not Mustafa Hassan, not Ali Farag, not Rami, never got paid, never will get paid to play an exhibition match in Egypt. And the reason is simple, because people see them every day. And that's how it is. People, the juniors now who are in Wadi Digla Club, let's say there's 100 kids watching Ali Farag just before you retired, or any of the women play. We're not looking at them the same way I'm looking at Peter Nekol or Jahangir or Jansha and just looking in on, or they're looking at them and seeing them as a target. Every junior is looking at the top player and is looking at him as a target, not as a fan. And I think this is what really helps. And in England, I think Lee was the same. When he was watching the top players back in his day, he saw them as a target. And that's how the curve really increases.
I'm gonna kind of give a small story which I learned a lot from Amr Shabana. You know, throughout my career, you know, I've had this not so nice tag of being too nice. And I remember speaking to Amr about it once, and he said, look, at the end of the day, squash is a very small portion of your life. It is like a laboratory experiment of life with a few controlled variables. So you actually did think a lot about life in general as well. And he said that if a person behaves in a certain way on a squash court with those controlled variables, with a very small kind of portion of your life riding on it, you can be rest assured that in life that person is going to do exactly the same thing. Looking at the way the game is today, there are a few questionable characters around, if you would have to put it that way. What advice would you have for the younger generation?
It would be the same. You have to look yourself in the mirror, because if push comes to shove, whether you're on the squash court or on the golf course or in a tennis match, if you do cheat in life, push comes to shove, you will find it very hard not to cheat. So an athlete has to look themselves in the mirror and know their strength and know their weakness and really have it on the surface. I knew I was never the fittest, nor the strongest, nor the biggest, nor the most talented, but I knew my strength, and I knew my admin work of data analytics would carry me through, and I used that portion. And even with the rules, I could bend it a little, and that's allowed. Like I remember, you can just take your space a little bit. You can, if somebody cheats against you, picks up a double bounce, and your pickup is maybe not that clear whether it was a double bounce or not, you leave it to the referee. Or if it hits the line and nobody's sure, if the opponent is in front of you and he's fair, you become fair. So in sport, you can bend the rules, not break them. So my advice to juniors would be, is number one, know yourself, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. It's okay to bend rules. It's life, it's sport, it's normal. But know that if you actually consciously take something that's not yours, you have to know that deep down, when you look at yourself, if it happens in real life, you'll probably do that in the same situation, and you can trick everybody around you and try to convince everybody around you that you're not that character. But between you and yourself, at the end of the day, you take something that's not yours, you know it's not yours. So my advice would be, just know that you'll never be able to get over it if you consciously take something that's not yours. So know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and avoid, it's okay, you lose a match, it's fine. You have 10 tournaments, you miss one, it's fine. But you take something that's not yours, know that deep down inside you know you broke it to take it. So that would be my advice.
You know, we've obviously got Kareem Darwish and Ali Farah coming in tomorrow. It's a great example of one generation kind of helping the next in a very integral kind of way. I joke with Darwish sometimes that how's your other son doing in Ali? What do you think is the role of like the previous generation helping the next generation? Do they need to have an active part, or do they need to kind of take a step back and let them kind of do the dance that they want to do and see from afar?
No, for sure, active part, and every person can pitch in the same way. Maybe my input is not the same as this traditional way where I retire and I go into coaching. Because of the way my body suffered, I can't stand for long periods of time. and just because of my injuries, but my phone is always open. Regardless who calls me up, I always have time. I'll spend 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and I'll call them up after a few days, what do you need? If they talk about training programs, I'll just give them everything I have, and I'll just say choose from it. Other players like Darwish is more active. I think to switch off completely and just be selfish with the knowledge, or think that the knowledge will not benefit yourself or the next generation, I think that's false. It's very important. This data seems very easy and very simple to the person who has it, but for sure juniors can benefit from it. I remember even I played until I was 36. I remember the last couple of years, nobody seemed to be nervous playing me. Like it's like they were happy playing me, and in my mind I was like, I've become an easy target. There's no fear. I can see in their eyes there's no fear. But what I realized after the matches, they would come and talk to me. They would come ask me for little bits and pieces. What do you think I did here, or what did I do there? I think this is very beneficial. The older generations, if they do love the sport and they did benefit from it, it is their duty to transfer that data to the next generation, even if it's not from the same nation.
I think just touching on a couple of things that Shabs has said there, that I think players nowadays, and the players at the top of the game, they need to realise that their position in the game is not just about the next match or what they do on the court, or the next win or the next tournament win. They're actually role models to, in this particular country, probably hundreds if not thousands of people, and worldwide, probably tens of thousands, hopefully hundreds of thousands of people. And that's a huge responsibility to have, and I think as you get older and you look back at careers and you look back at success, it's difficult to actually appreciate what that means and fully appreciate that you are shaping kids who look up to you on a daily basis, and you're not just shaping what they do on a squash court, you're shaping what they do off a squash court. And I think, whether you're a coach, whether you're a friend, family, whatever it is, I think it's so important to keep reminding players that, winning and losing feels like the absolute ultimate when you're in that moment. In a lot of cases it's not. In a lot of cases there's something far, far bigger that you're giving to people, whether you're entertaining people, whether you're teaching kids, whether there's people looking up to you as an individual. And I think it's really important, and certainly when I have conversations with top players, I think it's really important that they appreciate and they understand as much as they possibly can, because it is very difficult, that they are giving so much to people. And we're a relatively small sport. I think as sports gets bigger, that becomes a bigger issue. But I don't think anyone should realise that when you're on the court, you're entertaining people, you're on television, you're speaking, and the way that you conduct yourself, whether it's classed as cheating, winning, losing, how you handle it, how you hold your head up, how you conduct yourself in interviews, how you conduct yourself in the media, that is a really, really important part of being a professional athlete. And I think it's something about sport that probably everyone in this room and everyone that follows sport is probably deep down the reason why you do it. And I don't think we should ever move away from that, forget that, or make excuses for it.
Maybe one of the final couple of questions. This one's to both of you all. Lee, since you're prehistoric, we can maybe go back.
He's only a few months older.
He looks about 10 years old. But maybe for you, let's go back 10 years, in the last 10 years, and Shabs, for you, the last 5 years. Would you look at one of the players who dominated or played in that time and say that I would really like to have a go at my very best against that one player? You can go first. Yeah, since you're prehistoric, you can go first.
Yeah, Rami, I think, would be the one for me. I played him a couple of times, but I was sort of at the end of my career. It was at the start of obviously an amazing career, but I think he's probably after him the one player that all players sit outside the back, watch the match, and he would do something that everyone opens their mouth to, and just played a ridiculous style of squash that was just so entertaining. And the few matches that I had with him, I can tell you, were probably the most enjoyable. And I'm not sure I ever beat him, but generally lost. But you came off the court, it was fair, the referee was never involved, just squash was just the winner. And he was the one player that I would have looked to have probably been in slightly better shape and shared the court with a few more times looking back.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think the result would have changed much.
It would. You know it would.
No, I don't think so. But anyways, Amr, what about you? I'm actually very curious because I knew Rami was on the top of the list for Lee, but I'm very curious about your pick.
Current players?
Yeah.
Somebody who would like to have a go at?
He'd probably still beat them all, that's the problem.
You're probably looking at them now, they're all nightmares to play. But I think one person who I would like to have played in my very best would be a person like Diego. Because I think Diego would have, or does have the ability to cancel out your strengths. And when I mean strengths, I mean on the mental side of it. He moves so easy. And when somebody you're playing moves so easy, he surfaces your weaknesses. And just, if I'm able to play him at my best and feel comfortable, because that's when I know I have a chance. If I'm in a rally and I start to feel comfortable and I'm not out of breath, and I feel my heart's not pounding. But with Diego, if I did get a chance to play him and have that challenge of feeling comfortable and not feeling frustrated that the opponent I'm playing with just floating around the court, that would have been a nice challenge for me to have.
Interesting. I think we've got some very interesting people on this dais, so I'm sure we'll have a couple of questions, so please feel free to shoot away.
Hello everybody. By the way, Amr Shabana was and still my favorite. Thank you for being here. I'd like to say something. When I was planning to open Blackboard Sport Club at 2017, Amr Shabana was in Canada, I think, at this time, and I called him to give me my advice. How could I start with the best technical team in Egypt to start working in Blackboard? Amr Shabana was giving me an valuable advice, and it was a good start for Blackboard. He gave me Ashraf Hanafi. He's the best in Egypt to start with, and we did, and I have to thank Amr Shabana for it. Thank you.
Just for everyone, Mr. Ashraf Hanafi in the crowd as well, so
Just have
welcome.
something to say.
Yes.
I've been on since he was 7 in Kuwait, and I happened to leave Kuwait in the 90s, and I haven't seen him until the World Junior Championship in 1996, which Faizi won it, and Shabana, I think, lost in the second round or last 16, I don't remember. The next year, there was the World Open for men, team event and individuals, and it was a tradition that we pick one of the juniors to top up the team of 3, to take the fourth, to be one of the juniors, and the natural thing was to take Ahmed Faizi, who was the champion of the world at the time, under 19. I was the one who was able, I was the president special talent. Though he lost in the first round, I think it was second round. And I suggested that we have a round robin sort of matches among him and Faizi and Karim Stikani, as far as I remember. And they all accused me of being insane and mad, of thinking of Amr Shabana to compete with Faizi Stikani, who was the third position, I think, in the previous was junior event, and Faizi was the champion of the world. And actually, they played the round robin, and I'm on it. And we won instead of the other two to complete the main team, the men's team. And I think this gave him a great boost in his squash career. And I don't know if he remembers that or not, but it's my time pretending.
I remember it, and I remember I was in the same classroom with Faizi, who was at the time much bigger than me. I remember getting bullied too.
No, but sir, thank you very much from the whole world of squash for making that happen, because we might not have the specialty of Amr Shabana to look forward to. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Ashraf Hanafi at the back has, I'm sure, something wonderful to say.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Brian, for the nice compliment. Well, I have a lot of stories with Amr, and I was working with him for a while, and he's the one which I didn't work with him in the juniors, but I worked with him in the seniors, and there are a lot of stories would be very funny. And I'm sure what you said, that he has an eye in his back. No, he has a mirror in his right hand, because he has a left hand, and he learned to have the mirror all the time, so he has really advantage. And I think he is the one, he's gifted, and he is one, is not like the others. He got something, I think, from God. He could play from a very bad position. We learn all the juniors that you need to get a good position to it as any usual player. But he is a guy which he was all the time standing between the ball and the opponent. So I believe everyone has a difficulty because he doesn't see them. And he was able to play from very bad positions, perfect shots. So he is one from the very best players. He changed the nature of the squash. He was the first one, and I think him after brother, he were the two with the rise of squash up. So thank you very much for your journey. I think you know two stories, and they are very, very nice stories. In the final of the World Championship in Kuwait, he played against Rami Ashur, and I know you were in the room with Muhammad Ali, and he was edged in his shoulder, and he can't hold the racket. And he was thinking about, okay, tomorrow is the final in the world, and that would be the first tournament ever that would be walkover. He cannot play. So Muhammad Ali told me that all night he was looking at in the telephone and tried to trick himself and be training all of the night. He can't sleep well. The next day I was a commentator in the TV, and he did great, and he won the tournament, beating Rami. It was a crazy match. So he's the one who's doing everything to himself, even physical. So that was a very nice story. Another story that Lee mentioned, that he's going to finish the ball so early. And I don't know if you remember, I was coaching him in the British Open. I think against Lucas Bart from Holland, I don't know. Well, the score was at that time 2-8, so they played very well. First game, 8-all, serve from Lucas. So 8-all, the player has to choose 1 or 2, and then Amr says 1. So game ball, serve from Lucas, net from Amr, 10. So it's a game from Lucas. So I don't know what they said, but the most important thing I told him, Amr, please, they told, please give us a chance to play on and to get a chance maybe you win. They said yes, okay. Second game, exactly the same. 8 hole, and he has the shoes, and he chose 1, a serve, and the neck, and also the 10, and two love. So he went out and I told him, come on man, what shall I tell you? I told you just before you told me, coach, believe me, if we get the 7, 8 hole, I will go for 1. So this is how.
Thank you very much. We have one more on that.
This is gonna be an easy question, just representing Pan American. What are your thoughts on Jonathan Power at that time?
Me?
For sure.
Oh my God. Just, I remember finishing high school and then going on tour until I joined college. And then straight out of college, I started to get to know Jonathan at that time and we became friends. And I moved actually to Montreal where he lived. And I spent maybe 4 or 5 months there just to soak in everything that he can do. Because Jonathan is much different than me. I'm very square and I need to see a straight line before I do anything else. Jonathan is the complete opposite. Jonathan just improvises everything as it comes. And I think this was very good for me. And I think one of the things that really helped me is he took me out of my comfort zone. Like before we train, I need to know exactly what we're doing for the next 45 minutes and how much time for each dribble. Jonathan was the complete opposite. Jonathan would warm up and then say, okay, let's throw some drives, let's throw in a post now, let's throw in a cross-court now. For me, that was just insane, just to improvise that. And he was improvising everything, and even on court he improvises. That's why Jonathan is so unpredictable. As soon as he gets to a shot and he's there very fast, he improvises. So you can't really catch him because there's no game plan. Even he doesn't know that game plan. It's all improvised, and that's his talent. And just for me to be able to see how he handled the strategy part of the game, I think until now, it's unmatched. Like the way he played the game, the way he moved the opponent, even the way he thinks it. Like when you try and fake somebody on a certain shot, there's a certain way to do it. You're trying to send him the wrong way. With Jonathan, that even this wasn't traditional. I remember him telling me about the invisible line when he tries to fake somebody. I was like, what do you mean invisible line? He's like, whenever I play an opponent, I draw an invisible line behind him, and I try and make him step over the line, and as soon as he steps over the line, I change the direction of my wrist and have him step back over the line. I was like, it's too much information for me. And that's how Jonathan was. He was just thinking on a different signal than everybody else.
I have a question because now obviously there's a lot of Egyptian dominance, and that's why we're here discovering the secrets of Egyptian squash. Back in the day when you were playing, particularly in the men's ranking, there was a lot of different nationalities, a lot of different styles, a lot of different people from all over the world. Do you think it's better to have that type of variety, that we have more nationalities, different personalities, or you think it's good that we have a lot of dominance from Egyptian players?
Yes and yes. As an Egyptian, I'm happy there is dominance, but I know it's temporary. And I think, coming back to your question, there's a certain personality trait for nations. When the Pakistan came, there was a certain style of play. When the English played, they have a certain style of play. Each nation has a certain style that's tied into their DNA as a nation. And as a squash fan, we want to see this variety. If we just watch the Egyptians play, I don't think it's healthy for the sport. What's happening now is with college squash in the USA, with the systems being put in the Far East, like Hong Kong and China, with England, with the legacy and the squash leagues and being in the center of the world. We need this with the flair of the French, with the power of the Australians. You need all those traits. And as an Egyptian, I'm happy there is dominance, but for sure I'll be happy if the dominance is coming from the deep end of squash. I want to see lots of players from different nations and Egypt coming out on top, but not because it's lacking, because we're in the Olympics next year, 16 players. let's have 16 strong players from each nation.
I don't fully agree either with the sort of, I guess, the dominance thing. I think that, you know, the sheer number of players, and very, very good players from Egypt, has been the case for, like we say, probably 2 decades. But I think if you look at the top of the world rankings now, certainly in the men's game, I think the women's game are blessed with 3 players that are special. Like, there's generations that come around and you may end up with 1, 2 maybe special players within that generation. I think Egypt right now in the women's game have got three players that are just off the charts. It may be a while before that happens again. I think in the men's game, when you look at the top, you know, obviously Mustafa is a top Egyptian player. The story of Diego Elias from Peru, I think, is incredible. Joel Makin is a player that has paved his way in a way that no one really has for a long time. He's 4 in the world. Paul Cole's done exactly the same, you know, from a small nation in New Zealand, and he's, you know, pretty much cemented himself as 3 in the world. And you look at the players behind who are coming through to hopefully take those positions, and you wouldn't say that that is particularly dominated by Egyptians. There's a good number in there, but from my perspective, I'm pretty happy with the fact that I think nations, players, people from all over the world are looking at, you know, the Egyptian players and using them as you know, as players to try and beat and compete with. And like I say, I think the women's game at the moment, there's 3 very, very special players. But I think once you look behind those, there is a good mix of nations where, you know, there's good competition and there's good, you know, squash is still a very global sport.
I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you, Lee, for taking time out of your very busy COO duties at PSA. Amr Shabana, thank you very much for being who you are. Thank you for being, in my opinion, one of the best role models as world number 1. You've set a very, very high benchmark for everyone coming after you. Thank you for teaching us how to play the game and how to live life. Thank you very much again.
Thanks, Saurav.
Thank you.
Thanks, Saurav.